Welcome back to another episode of Top of the List. My name is Ryan Barnett, or RB, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dom Gonzalez. And this week we'll be discussing our review of one of the most talked about films on Netflix right now. Of course, released 4 days ago, The Devil All the Time, sort of mystery, psychological thriller, I would say, based off of the novel by Donald Ray Pollock, and starring of course, Tom Holland, a big cast, Sebastian Stan, and Robert Pattinson. Let's get right into it. Dom, what did you think about this film? I know we just both watched it within the last 24 hours.
Yeah, we both just watched it recently, like last night, and I think we just kind of wanted to watch this because number one, I saw the trailer come out when it did on Instagram, and immediately I was attracted by a few of the performances. It seemed like it like some of the actors were going to be playing some different roles than they had ever played before, especially Tom Holland and namely Robert Pattinson as well. But like we've previously discussed, Ryan, there's also a few surprise performances in this one that turned out to be really great. So overall, for me, I think we should start with giving our scores and then just taking a chance for people to go see it if they haven't seen it, because I'm definitely going to give this one a recommend to watch. Um, is it one of the best movies on Netflix? Absolutely not. I think I've seen a couple movies that are better than this. Namely, one of my favorite movies on Netflix is I Am Mother. That's a really great sci-fi movie on Netflix that I think is really underrated. And there's a couple other great Netflix movies out there right now, Netflix original movies. But I do have to say that this one was a cut above your average movie. And really, for me, it was the performances that held this one above. The story dragged it down a little bit in some areas. And I think we kind of agree on that in a few specific areas. But overall, I'm going to give this one. I have a hard time giving scores. I think everything is amazing, like Ryan says, but it's not a must see, which I would say is 9 or above, right? Like
Yeah.
must see is 9 or above. It's not a must see, and I don't think it's deserving of an 8.5 either. It's not almost amazing. I'm gonna go 7.5. I think
Okay.
I'm gonna
Okay.
go
Yeah.
7.5.
I mean, to me, that's very high praise for this film. Of course, for those of you viewers out there who haven't sort of caught on, Dom more a film connoisseur than myself. I kind of just kick back and watch movies. He knows more the technical terms and whatnot. But you know, I had some problems with this film. I will agree with you. I think there were some performances that were absolutely brilliant. I do want to highlight Robert Pattinson. He definitely wasn't a featured character in this film, but more sort of just a supporting character. But I thought when he was
Totally.
on the screen, I could not take my eyes off the screen. I thought that Tom Holland was pretty good in this film. I felt towards the end he kind of fell off the wagon of this, sort of scrappy American 1950s Cold Town kind of kid and went full Spider-Man on us. At least the way he sounded. But, I thought he gave a good performance. I did have a lot of problems with the pacing of this film. I thought it was extremely slow at the beginning. But that being said, I did like some of the filmmaking decisions here. And I think it's paying homage to the author of the original novel, Donald Ray Pollock, who also was the narrator, I believe, in
Yeah.
this film, and how he told the story. Very Tarantinian. I liked that we had multiple characters whose plot lines all intertwined, and we sort of had to put the pieces together by the end. Very, told in the same way that like a Pulp Fiction was told. But once again, I think Pulp Fiction threw us into the action right at the beginning with, of course, the diner scene, and then we have, Jules and Vincent. Here in a film like this, I felt like it took really long to get going, and then once we finally got to see Tom Holland as a full-grown Arvin on screen, then the film started getting going. So I'm gonna give this one either a 6.5 or a 7. Right now, I'm gonna give it a 6.5. I'll let you convince me maybe to bump it up to a 7. So anyone who hasn't seen it yet, this is where we're going to get into some spoilers. Go ahead and pause the video. Go watch the film. it's definitely worth giving a look. It's an above average film,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's a
But
recommend. For me at least, I would say definitely a recommend. Even if you might think you might not like it, it's Netflix. Just watch it for a few minutes and hang in there if you can. If you can't, then it's not your cup of tea.
yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah. This is a film that is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So go ahead, give it a chance. I would say it's a film that, like I said, it's slow. It gets better. So maybe give it 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say just give it like 10 minutes and then turn it off if you don't like it, because it is very slow at the beginning. But
yeah.
give it some time, and then from there, keep watching if you like. Go ahead and turn it off if you don't. At least that's my suggestion here, because this is not going to be everyone's cup of tea.
Okay, yeah. So pause the video and then come back later because now we're going to be starting our spoiler discussion. So there's a lot of things that we could talk about that have to do with spoilers, but what I want to do with first is I want to go kind of by the structure, right? So like every movie has 3 acts, right, Ryan? That's
Mhm.
kind of the way that all the storytelling works nowadays. Um, I liked how you brought up a few of those Pulp Fiction comparisons. For me, I think Pulp Fiction does not have a bad act at all. In
Yes,
this movie,
agreed. Oh, completely agreed.
right, and in this movie, I didn't see that kind of division that you see in Pulp Fiction, where it's like 3 isolated stories told separately. It was like more of like this one, they would go forward and then jump back, and then go forward again, and then jump back, and then go forward. Like a couple times they did that where it was like they showed something that was after, like let me just say, for example,
Yeah, go right ahead.
they give away that uh the actor, I forget his name, I don't know his name, but he was in Harry Potter. He plays the first guy that's a crazy preacher and he seduces Eodora's mom,
Right, we're
right?
talking about Helen and Roy Lafferty. So Helen played by Mia Wasikowska, and Roy Lafferty played by Harry Melling.
Right. So they kind of say before that he kills his wife, right?
Yes.
But then, like, time goes on and movie time in our time as the viewer goes on, as well as time within the movie. And then all of a sudden we're jumped back to the scene and we get to actually see it. It felt kind of tacked on, like, I think you said you felt like they were gonna go in a different direction at one point.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just like they didn't do it that, like, they didn't do that way of storytelling as good of a justice as they could have, like we've seen in Pulp Fiction, like we've seen in other Tarantino movies and other movies that mess
Yeah.
with the chronological order of events. So that was my
Right.
main dig.
Yeah, no, I agree definitely. And like I said, I think from what I was reading, this film very much almost like a shot for shot taken from the novel, and I believe this is how the novel is structured.
Okay.
But no, I definitely agree with you. I think it would make more sense on the page than on the screen as it did. But that being said, I think there's some moments in Pulp Fiction like that as well. Of course, the sequences with Bruce Willis, of course, taking place after the diner scene, because of course Bruce Willis. I know we're going on a tangent here with Pulp Fiction, but Bruce
Yeah.
Willis' character kills John Travolta's character kills Vincent in that scene, but then of course we jump back. But either way, I understand what you're saying. Definitely, I got there were times where I didn't understand that this timeline was going forward and then jumping back until I'd have like a revelation moment 20 minutes later, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh,
That's
okay, so this is where this fit in.
That's exactly what I had, and I watched it with my parents, and they had the exact same reaction as you did.
Yeah,
Which, as a filmmaker, maybe that can be to your advantage if that's like at the end. If there's like this big twist at the end, and you're like, "Oh, I just put all these pieces together that happened, 30 minutes ago at the end as part of the big reveal." But for me, it was more like, "Wow, I'm just trying to catch up to where they're going with
yeah,
this." Does that make sense? Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
guess that kind of does make sense, but. So like, and here's another thing I wanted to kind of say too, is that I think that uh like I said, that there's the 3 act structure.
Mhm.
Act 1 of this movie is so slow. I had
Yes,
no
yes,
idea that most of the first, I would even say the first half of this movie, if you were to split it in half, it isn't until the beginning of the second half that we first get to see Tom Holland on screen. And
correct.
for
Yes,
me, watching just that one trailer they released, I came to see Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson go at odds with each other. And
Mhm.
that's just such a small portion of the movie that I felt like I was kind of misled a little bit from the trailer. And like, it's nothing against Bill Skarsgård, who plays his dad in the beginning of the movie. He carries the movie. It's just, I feel like the storytelling could have been a lot tighter. They should have just tightened that part up so we could get to the part with Tom Holland quicker, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. Like I said in my intro when I was giving my score, that was my key problem with the pacing of this film, because as soon as Tom Holland gets on screen, of course, that leads to of course, Robert Pattinson's character. That leads to their standoff, and from there it's sort of an awesome roller coaster, and I'm along for the ride, and I'm locked in. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The beginning of this this film, we're getting to know the characters, but it's like there was so much time to get to know who everyone was. And yet my feeling was that I would have rather learned who everyone was through Tom Holland than through Bill Skarsgård and that first generation of characters.
Absolutely.
But that being said, I will say that like I said, the second half of this film I found I'm going to use that word, a roller coaster. I was locked in by that point. That's why I told everyone, and you and I both said to everyone who's watching, if they're going to watch, give it 30, 45 minutes. Don't just give it the standard 15 you'd give most films, because once Tom Holland's on screen, it's very enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think I want to be clear, as far as like, I give it a 7.5, which is a higher score than what I think we're kind of selling the movie as right now. The reason I'm giving this movie a 7.5 is because I was where Ryan was at about halfway through the movie when we're first getting introduced to Tom Holland, and we get the first scene with him, and it's the opening to the trailer where it's his birthday, he's getting the present of his dad's gun. From then on, that's what made it a 7.5 for me. Honestly, like, that portion of the movie felt like it was a whole step above what had come before. So I guess that's what I could say. Wanted to say is just like, stick with this one because it's a slow burn. Absolutely, in every sense of the term, it's a slow burn, but it does pay off in that end if you stick around. So. Yeah.
Now, I will say, here's my biggest knock of the second act of this film, and I know we discussed this before filming, and you agree with me a little bit. Sebastian Stan is the sheriff, Sheriff Bodecker. I don't know that I necessarily understood his play. I understand that he needed to be there because you have the big final standoff scene between him and Tom Holland.
Yeah.
But his character and his story arc didn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, with the exception of, and once again, big spoiler here, he goes in and he kills the crime bosses of his town or whatever before his sister dies, and he has the standoff with Tom Holland. And I felt like that's just to show us that he's a bad person too. That nobody in this film is really a good person. We don't have a true protagonist or antagonist. We just have people, and we're watching candid filmmaking in this town of, these towns in Ohio and Pennsylvania, or Ohio and West Virginia, that are just, full of these, dark characters, the devil all the time.
Knock 'em stiff. I liked when he said that in the movie. I could barely understand what he said in the beginning of the movie when he says, "Anyone knew where knock 'em stiff?" I was like, what did he say? Yeah, dude, I agree with you on that too, though. But I don't know, like, that didn't bother me that much, really, in the end. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, that.
To me, that second half just felt like it was the movie I had been waiting for.
Right, I understand. But I mean, we talked about this in our last episode too. In Cobra Kai season 2.
Yeah.
I have a problem when I think there are characters whose stories are rushed and they're thrown in there because they need to gel the story together, but they're rushed. I don't think I fully understood the role of the two, the husband and wife serial murderers. I didn't really get that. I said, I didn't.
Yeah.
Sebastian Stan's arc. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on. This whole Sebastian Stan thing. I think like when I first saw his character, like, I was like, oh, they're just doing this, like, trying to show that this town itself has, like, corruption in it, and, like, because he's kind of corrupt even from the first scene when he's, like, in the car with the woman. Like, you could tell this guy's, he's on the take. He's he's a shady character, and I think that's kind of just the point of his character.
Right.
And that in itself is kind of a shallow reason for having this character, just to show that there's corruption and that in the end everyone got what they had coming for them because they were all corrupt and they were all bad or they were all evil in some way. I get what you're saying there too. So
I don't know. I felt badly. I agree that everyone got what was coming to them in this film, except for I have one character who I felt like didn't deserve to die, and I felt really badly when she did die, and that was Lenora.
Laura, yeah,
Yeah, so Eliza Scanlen. I thought
she's really good in this. I
yeah,
thought,
I mean, her major downfall is she's really, she's taken advantage of by this backward preacher played by Robert Pattinson. And he's kind of shows his true colors, if we hadn't seen it already, that he's fooling around with her when she tells him that she's pregnant, and then you have it tied in nicely with that sermon he gives about delusions.
man, what a great monologue.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the absolute highlights of this movie.
Yeah. Well, like I said, to me, the highlight of this film was Robert Pattinson. I am not a Robert Pattinson fan. I'm not looking forward to Robert Pattinson as Batman. I will come out and say it. But this role, seeing Robert Pattinson, because, I mean, all I knew him from was Harry Potter and the Twilight films.
You haven't
Seeing
seen
in
some
this
of his
role,
best movies yet, bro.
it made me feel more comfortable in seeing him and giving him a chance as Batman. Because I thought in this role, he gave an amazing dark edge, something that I didn't know he could give beyond just, his sort of, repressed, quiet young guy.
You haven't seen him since Twilight, though. That's the problem. Is because like I'm gonna go out and say it right now. Maybe we should make this like a little aside just because we missed Batman Day. But like, I've been following Robert Pattinson for a while now. Ever since he started to have this resurgence in independent cinema, especially like Ryan. So one of me and Ryan's favorite films from last year was Uncut Gems, directed by the Safdie brothers.
Mm-hmm.
The film they made before Uncut Gems stars Robert Pattinson in it, and it's about he plays this guy that's on the run after he's made a robbery, and it's the whole 24 hours to 48 hours after he's made the robbery, and he's on the cops are on his heels. He's chasing them. And it's just how he survives running away from the cops the whole day. It's really cool. And then there's also a couple other movies like High Life, which he plays an astronaut in space trapped with his daughter. And that one's really good. And namely, my favorite performance by him, The Lighthouse. I think The Lighthouse is probably my favorite movie of the last year, if not the last 5 to 6 years, I would say. But for another conversation, though.
And of course, I didn't realize that he was in Tenet.
Yeah, he's also in Tenet.
Yeah, well, I will say, like I said, I could not take my eyes off the screen when.
That's why I'm saying is like when I saw him in this movie, I was like, you're saying you were surprised by how good he was. Like in this movie, yes, I was like, this is more of what I come to expect. Every role this guy gets recently is fire, man, fire.
Well, I know The Lighthouse got rave reviews, and of course, I'm a huge, it's Willem Dafoe, right?
Correct.
With him? Yeah, and I'm a huge Willem Dafoe fan, so maybe give it a look now. Like I said, before this, I wasn't a huge Robert Pattinson fan, but definitely will give it a look because he gave a great role here. Yeah. Like I said, I thought Tom Holland.
I think he did good as playing something darker than Peter Parker.
Look,
he did what we could have done.
I loved the sequence where he did essentially what his father did. We see him as a kid watching his father beat up those poachers when they see him, right after they see him and praying. And I think they say something about going and keeping his bed warm with his wife while he's praying. And then he goes and is defending Lenora and beats the crap out of those guys who've been bullying her.
Right.
I thought that was a great scene. And then, of course, the standoff with Robert Pattinson. But afterwards, when he's hitchhiking and he gets picked up by, by the murderers, and then he has a standoff with Sebastian Stan, I feel like he completely just gave up in playing this hardened, Southern kid. Yeah. I was disappointed with him there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I could see that, but I didn't really – I felt like he kind of did a really good job throughout the whole movie. All the supporting cast was really good. Sebastian Stan was even good in a role that didn't have that much depth to it. Yeah.
I just want to also bring another point. I was talking about this with my girlfriend, Caitlin, while we were watching it. So I had totally forgotten that Sebastian Stan was the sheriff who came to pick up Arvin after he finds his father who's killed himself.
Right.
Does he just not age in this film? He looks exactly the same throughout the entire film.
That's what's kind of weird, huh? Yeah.
As do his sister and husband, who, of course, if you remember, meet the same day, if I'm not mistaken, in the diner that Arvin's father meets Arvin's mother.
Right.
And they never age.
That was kind of weird, too, is that my mom didn't understand that part either, too. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. No, that's a knock against it as well, you could say.
But all in all, I think it's easy to sit here and pick out negatives, and that's true for every film. But once again, I would say this is an above average film. I don't think I've heard enough evidence to move my score up from a 6.5 to a 7. Mm-hmm. So it's an above average film, not quite in the realm, I would say, of good, but definitely still above average and worth giving a look. Some people are going to love it. Some people aren't. I fell sort of in the middle of that spectrum. And like I said, any film, it's easy to sit here and pick out the negatives. Any film that's not a 10 out of 10. And it sounds like we're bashing it, but we both had parts of this film that we really enjoyed.
Yeah. There's definitely, if you're into the kind of movies like this, another thing I wanted to touch on too, that I always like to flex my English degree on you, Ryan, is this feels like a William Faulkner kind of story too, in a lot of different ways. I'm not sure if you've read any William Faulkner.
Maybe not. I don't.
Maybe
it
not.
Wouldn't have been in college as a business major. I'll tell you that much.
Absolutely not.
Maybe in high school.
Yeah, but
did he write The Pearl?
No, he didn't write The Pearl.
Was that Steinbeck?
Yeah, I think so.
Close.
Yeah, no. William Faulkner wrote a lot of great books, but yeah, it feels a lot like he wrote like As I Lay Dying and a few other really good ones. Of course, I'm not going to remember. Absalom is my favorite book by him, but kind of takes place in that, southern region of the United States, that where they all have that certain kind of accent.
Yeah, the proper southern drawl. And
the southern drawl.
Exactly. I had to take a look just to see if there's anything I have read by Faulkner, which I haven't. But yeah, he's a Mississippi boy, so that makes sense.
Yep. So it feels a lot like that if I were to compare it to something in literature. But as that is, I think we've kind of said what we both needed to say on this. So Ryan, your final score is 6.5. I think I might even take mine down a little bit just from what you were making a few arguments that reminded me of some negatives I did have while I was watching. Some similar feelings we had together. I'd say I firmly put this in the good territory. I wouldn't say it's just above average. I would say the performances alone make it good. But once again, it's the story for me that holds it back and the pacing of it specifically. So, so I'd say probably a 7, maybe a 6.5 for you. But with that said, go ahead and check out our most recent video. Cobra Kai Season 2 should be up, as well as our Mandalorian Season 2 review, or trailer reaction, sorry. Mandalorian Season 2 trailer reaction. Along with, I think that was the most recent videos we have up, right, Ryan?
Yeah, those were definitely the most recent. And stay tuned. I think we may be recording a trailer reaction to WandaVision, which just dropped a new trailer today, just a couple hours ago. So we may be dropping that pretty soon as well on the channel. You want to take us out, Dom?
Sure. I'm Dom Gonzalez. You can follow me at Dom Gonzalez48 on Instagram and Twitter. This is RB. You can follow him at RB_the_SID on Instagram. Let us get in contact with us there if you have any positive feedback. I want to say, I don't want people bashing us, but if you have any positive feedback, you can reach us on Instagram, or you can let us know down in the comments below. And of course, like and subscribe if you want more videos. We release them usually 1 video a week, if not 2. If we're feeling like we want to make some more videos. So stay tuned for that and all of our future content. We'll see you guys in the next video. Later.